So exercise order. First off, what's up, Tyler? How you doing?
What's going on, brother?
I feel like I'm all wound up right now, dude. I've been working all day. My energy's high, and I'm like, let's just dive into it.
Good. I just took a cold shower, so I'm ready to roll.
Cold shower. Did you?
Yeah.
Like Wim Hof style?
I don't do any Wim Hofing, but yeah, it's blazing cold.
Why? Okay, let's dive into that before we dive into the main topic.
Dude, I shouldn't have brought it up.
Yep, there we go.
Yeah. I'm kind of like a creature of habit, and like I'll be like, okay, so for 40 days, just take a cold shower. And then that turned into like almost a year and a half now. I've been taking cold showers.
Really?
And yeah.
Like, do you do it for the physiological benefits of it and like performance, or do you do it because it makes you feel better and that's like the main benefit of it?
Started as a religious thing.
Oh.
Then turned into, this is actually making me sleep really good, which is kind of the opposite. You think cold shower, you think excitement, but apparently like spiking my CNS like about an hour or two before bed, like I would crash hard. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. So now it's just what I do.
That's awesome. Yeah. Was that like a religious thing? You do something for 40 days that's challenging, or got it?
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm actually reading, I don't know if you know this, but over the last 8 months, I've gotten involved in the church again. Since I was a teenager, I kind of fell away and rededicated my life to Jesus. So I'm reading a book now. It's called Stand Firm and Act Like Men, but it's written by a pastor. And one of the things, I'm including it in a video that we're doing, but one of the things I've been doing recently is reading the Bible, but in the first part of the Bible, he says God blesses us with work to do, right? So, and like the whole book is about how we're not meant to stay comfortable, all that type of stuff. So I'll literally, like, when I'm feeling anxious or have a lot of anxiety about something, I'll ask myself, like, what is the one thing I am avoiding? What is the one thing that if I could do today, I would feel like my day was productive? And then I'll just focus on doing that thing. And every time I do it, man, I get to the end of the day and I'm like, damn, that was a good day. So there's something to it, man. There's something to it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
All right. So diving into it, first question, why does exercise order even matter? Why can't we just go into the gym and do random exercises and get specific results?
Yeah, because all stress elicits a response or an adaptation. So when targeting an outcome, you need to know what type of stress to give it. So we know that certain orders of training lead to certain results, and other orders or out of order leads to wackiness, weird fatigue, and not a lot of yield or benefit from the session.
So so obviously it depends on the main goal. So obviously 99.9% of our guys are training up for the military or for a specific selection. So the main goals are to support that performance outside the gym and in that environment. So with that goal in mind, what does the order look like that we focus on it inside of those strength sessions?
The order of exercise selection follows almost the same paradigm as most sports generally, most strength conditioning programs generally, because what we have found is that the speed and neurological demand, everything trickles down from there. So most of the research was built off of what's called the force velocity curve. So imagine up here is F, there's a curve, all the way down here is speed. So we know that movements that are incredibly fast or movements that are incredibly demanding tax the nervous system the most. So we want to do those early on. And then movements that are slower, even though they might have more weight on them, don't actually tax the nervous system as much in the moment of training.
Got it. And when you say movements that are faster, then we prioritize those in the beginning of the session. What is an example of that?
So any type of plyometric where the impulse or the intent via the nervous system is to recruit and explode as fast as possible. A medicine ball throw, if you were going to do an Olympic lift, it'd be sooner. But any type of high level jump, sprint, even a sled sprint done extremely light would fall into this category as well.
Right. And Kyle, you mentioned triple broad jumps. Absolutely one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And this is something that I think stems from CrossFit, and I hate on CrossFit a lot just because it really gets those guys fired up. But I actually enjoy CrossFit. I think it's fun to compete with guys. But for our purposes, there are a lot of things that I don't like about CrossFit. And one of those is using those high volume box jumps or those high, like they say like these power development movements inside of a CrossFit workout, but towards the bottom, and it's just about conditioning. Like there's two types or two use cases for movements like that. Yes, you can do it later in a session, but the benefits of it would primarily be cardio or conditioning aspect of it. If you have it in the beginning of the session, and this is why a lot of you guys will see notes when I write the programs that says, hey, 3 reps, focusing on max output or max explosiveness with each rep, resting for 90 seconds between those reps. And the goal with that is not conditioning like you would see in a CrossFit plan, but power development like we're seeing in an athletic development or performance development plan. So plyometrics, power development at the start of the session, which is going to tax the nervous system the most. What's the next one down from there?
Just to piggyback on that, like one of my little sayings that I have is that speed and power should never be done in a fatigued state. So in order to produce that speed or in order to produce that power, you have to be like completely reset, which means you can't be in this cloud of stress or fatigue in order to execute something of high demand, high control, and high speed. So coming in after that is still going to be a strength-based movement. And just to talk about movements, when we're talking about exercise selections for speed, power, and strength, we tend to focus more on movements than muscles. So flexion, extension, rotation, or we could say lower body push-pull, upper body push-pull, full body extension would be something like a clean. So we're not thinking legs or back. It might be done as far as like, once we put this whole workout together, we'd be like, okay, this is a leg focused day, or we could say this is a hip extension focused day via bilateral squatting. So just to give you an idea of like what strength coaches think, like it's not so much muscles, it's movement. And that's all built off of that neurological base. So we kind of know the decay rates and fatigue rates of these exercises and how they can be best applied to transfer to your sport or what you're training for. So strength is the next. And what we see is because it sits almost towards the middle of that force velocity curve or upper tier, so more towards the F portion of that curve, which means the movement is ultimately going to be slower because you're now moving heavier things. We talked about demand, and it's not to say that heavier, slower movements are not demanding. So like psychologically, you could be like, I have to be completely focused, coach. So all I mean by neurologically demanding, something of higher speed is more neurologically demanding, is that usually the rate of force or just the rate of speed is so high, you don't have time to think about it. So you can kind of prep and do drills and try to have that muscle movement feeling or cue in your head, and then you're sprinting. When you're deadlifting, you can still pull methodically and think about, all right, shoulder blades, lats tight, while you're continuing to move. So that's why we would say, okay, not as neurologically challenging.
Yeah. So we have the speed or power, then strength development. With the strength, because this is something that we often get asked, especially with guys who come from more of like a hypertrophy focused background. Why are we training strength typically in the rep range of 3 to 6 instead of pushing it to 8 to 12?
Couple reasons. The main reason ultimately has to do with fatigue. And our ultimate goal is to give you greater exposures to what matters. That is everything outside the weight room, everything that you will be assessed on. So we want these exercises to transfer well for you. We want you to be like a usable subject. If we blast you too hard, then you might not get the most out of hitting your cows or trying to make the times in the run. You just might have too much fatigue on you. And then we start to see the secondary parts of that is just, oh, hey, my shins, oh, my low back, this and that. So now we have other things to work on now because we just wanted to push the volume too much. And in my experience, like once you get into sets of like 8 to 12, we're pretty much hypertrophic at this point. Like we're asking a lot of the tissue at that point, and it's gonna require quite a bit of recovery, about 48 hours. So if you do like 3 sets of 12 in the back squat and they're above 70%, you're going to need 48 hours of like rest, like real rest, to get that tissue ready, primed, recovered, and to be able to execute again. But if you have to go run, possibly swim, hit some iron mics, like you're just not going to be able to sustain that for 4+ weeks. Once we get into the sets of 5, we see the greatest return on our investment. And that's because of the fatigue. So we can still put on size in sets of 5, no doubt. We can clearly get stronger in sets of 5, no doubt. And it is enough repetition to improve our skill and or economy. And just a side note on strength, we know through some experimentations in the 80s and 90s, and we call them the rule of 10s. And then if you get really strong, it becomes the rule of 8s. And what that means is if I do 10 repetitions near and around 80% total per exercise per week, I can maintain my strength almost forever. So what does that mean? That means if I'm back squatting, doing 2 sets of 5, anywhere around 75 or 80%, I can maintain my strength in the back squat just doing that one session once a week. And I can just hold and hold and hold. That way, it gives me the ability to maybe bring other weaknesses. So like maybe I have a really weak bench press. Maybe I want to take 4, 5, 6 sets of working on the bench press. So maybe I peel off something I'm already really good at. I have a lot of exposure and strength to the back squat, and I just keep that at a 2x5. So strength coaches can kind of manipulate volume that way as well, and sticking within the rep range for the desired outcome.
Yeah. And Bridger had a question on this, which is relevant. And we could talk about it both from like a strength progression standpoint, which is what we do, and some of the methodologies that we implement. But is there any benefit to alternating the rep range? 1 week do high reps, the next week go lower reps?
But ultimately, I would say that's probably, in layman terms, just a little bit too much confusion on your body. So if you're let's just say if your training age is really high, there's some people that can pick up set rep schemes within 2 to 3 weeks, but most folks it's 4 to 6. So that means, hey, we're doing 3 sets of 5 and we're going to slightly go up in weight each week. But by week 3, even though you're probably 10 to 15 and sometimes 20 pounds heavier than week 1, are you shooting up out of the hole even faster than you were on week 1? If the answer is yes, then we have like an incredible adaptation. You have learned the skill, you've learned the intent, you're getting stronger, your economy is improving. And that's just kind of the repetition of almost everything, as in like, hey, I don't want to like dumb this down or dumb your question down, but if you have a first grader and just one day we're going to do addition, and then we're going to come back next week and do subtraction, and then we're going to come back next week and try to teach some basic division. It's just, you can't learn that process as easy as, hey, 3 weeks of addition, then 3 weeks of subtraction. You'll probably retain that information a little bit more. And the nervous system works that way as well. So it's really learning in that rep range is what we're getting after.
Love that. That was a really good analogy. With assistance movements, so we got speed and power, strength. Now we go into our assistance work. What does assistance work like? How do you define assistance work? And then how do we implement it?
Well, I always, when I was studying for it, I kept it simple. I like things nice and simple. So high speed to low speed, many multiple joints to smaller amount of joints that are working. So usually, if you have all the major joints working, that's the ankles, knees, hips, and shoulders, maybe an assistance exercise, you just might have the knees, hips, shoulders, i.e. like a back extension or a Nordic. Or it might just be one joint, i.e. the tib raise or a quad extension. So you're just working down from fast movement to slow movement, many joints to smaller joints, and that's as simple and as plain as you can keep it. In the accessories, you want to be mindful of the stimulus you just gave your body throughout the session, and you want to complement it with the accessories. The accessories, to me, is always a complement to the work that's been manifested and an understanding of what's happening throughout the rest of the week. So there's 2 ways to go about it when it comes to accessories. You can complement the week by contrasting the accessory to the main movers of the day. So what do I mean by that? That means if we did those back squats that we talked about, so like say we warmed up, we did some sprints, maybe I hit a power clean, and then I went into squatting. That's a lot of anterior dominant leg movement. So maybe for my accessory, I take the posterior chain into account and I start working posterior chain, some hamstring, Nordics, even calf raises, because I know maybe on Thursday, I'm going to do a bunch of deadlifting and hinge-like activities. And then my accessories would be like, some single leg squats, maybe those quad extensions. So I'm just contrasting anterior and posterior of the lower limb. And it could be as elaborate as I did some primarily squatting movements that day, and my accessories are going to be like upper body pulling. So now I've just switched from lower body movement focus movements to an accessory of the upper back, because I know that on my deadlift day, when I'm doing a bunch of hinge work, maybe I'm going to hit some anterior pec or some anterior shoulder work. And that's a way that if a subject is incredibly fatigued from that base work, you can peel off legs altogether and just go, hey, we're going to do some upper back because your training age is low, and maybe that's what we need to do. And then the third piece of that, when it comes into like some sport-specific skill, some of y'all are going to be tested in selection. And sometimes the test is as plain as, how good can you work when you're really banged up? So some people, for their accessories, depending on the time, might just go in hard and try to blow their legs up on purpose to see how they can maneuver and work out of that state. So let's say I did my squats, I did some leg extensions, some hamstring curls, and then I'm just going to hit lunges like crazy until like I can't really walk, but just keeping it within reasonable. Say I'm going to lunge straight for 3 to 5 minutes and build up as much lactate as possible. And then I'm going to rest an hour, or maybe tomorrow I'm going to have my speed day and I'm going to see how my legs handle all this, because that's what's going to be happening at selection. Now, do you do that a year out from selection? Probably not. You're not developed enough to handle that. And you don't want to handle it 2 weeks before selection either, because your body really doesn't, or at least you don't know how your body's going to recover that. So there is a nice sweet spot, probably about 12 weeks out, 16 weeks out, that you can really start to play around with these things if you're at a very high training age.
Yeah, I accidentally did that today.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I had legs or lower dominant session yesterday, and then went a little bit too hard, and then I had a filming session on the track today, so I was like, oh man, my hamstrings are pumped right now, but it felt good. Always good to get that fatigue resistance, or that mental toughness factor of being able to work through that fatigue as well. And then the last one in the tower of the exercise layout is the conditioning aspect. And I got a couple questions on this. There's a lot of debate about conditioning first, conditioning last, etc. What is the first and foremost reason why the majority of the time we have the conditioning towards the end?
The basic reason, again, has to do with that stimulus response. So the weight room is for getting stronger, to move better, to move faster. And the conditioning is not really necessarily the opposition of that, but it's kind of a display of skill and durability and work capacity. So once we've done the work, we can then display some of these skills and intent and exhaust ourselves. That way we can still get some of the benefits that we worked on during the session. So for example, if we flipped it, if I did a bunch of conditioning in the beginning, I'm kind of walking into a messy classroom. I'm not going to be able to pay attention. I'm going to be really aggravated and be looking out the window the whole time. It's just a lot of noise with that. Now, maybe you're an MMA fighter. Maybe there's a time closer to camp where we deploy some type of conditioning things, maybe some low impact assault bike sprints, and then we get into some kettlebell swings, and then bang, I'm slowing the pace down with some single arm dumbbell bench and some rope pull-ups, and that's applicable to that sport at a certain time. So with everything, there's little caveats that you can use, but generally the principle, if you're trying to get the most out of your session, that would be the particular order.
Yeah. And in the majority of time, that is the order that we will implement. Guys might see every once in a while some conditioning on the front side, more into kind of the accessory work and things like that. But most of the time, it is there. Or you might see conditioning on the front side, and then like what Tyler talked about in the kind of a minimum effective dose to maintain strength, but not necessarily maximal loads where you're trying to crush yourself after those conditioning work. So 2 questions. Sometimes we implement contrast training. So we might have them do a trap bar deadlift into a broad jump. What are the primary benefits of contrast training inside of a strength plan?
So contrast training is really beneficial. It was once considered something that would be advanced, but we know now is if you're contrasting almost the same movement pattern, it's almost like an assistance. For example, if you have a trap bar deadlift and you're taking it into a box jump, it may actually improve the box jump capabilities. The neural demand on the trap bar deadlift mimics that of a squat and or a jump. So if you overload that system, you now can recruit better, and you're actually solidified under load a really good landing position. So if you can really get tense before you act on the bar and then move the bar, you're improving landing mechanics immediately. So then you walk off, you go right onto the box jump, and as long as those power movements are no greater than about 3 repetitions, like that's really good butter right there. That's really helping the athlete recruit better, move more effectively, and it's kind of just unleashing that nervous system to kind of say, hey, let go, let this guy just explode. Little post-activation potentiation with the load change. which is all beneficial.
Which is the thing that comes to mind when I think about that is baseball players. You'll see MLB players, they're standing in the on-deck circle and they have the big weight on their bat and they're swinging that. And that can increase bat speed when they step into the box. So same principle applies there. Awesome. So what is kind of a quick check you would use in either for a guy that you're building out the program for or for your own training program, things that you would focus on? So for me, when I do my personal training, it's like, okay, what is my priority right now? What are those things that you look for in like your programming?
Okay. My program is going to be a little bit different because it's always like high speed and power moves. So like many track folk, the primary purpose of mainly the whole first half of the workout is just to feel good. I need my body to feel good. If I'm sore, if I'm bruised, I'm banged up, like the signals in my head will say, you can't go as fast, you cannot explode. So I tend to put all my accessories in the beginning of my workout. So I would do like a dynamic warm-up, like I'm about to go sprint, then I'd come off of that. Then I would do maybe some isometrics, some single leg squats, some Nordics, maybe some stuff on the GHD, keeping the rep ranges down 5 and below with high speed intent or just really good recruitment and focus so it's not neurally demanding. So again, I'm going against principles because my training age is through the roof and my whole goal is speed and power. After that, I might do some loaded jumps. And then if my body's like, hey, we're feeling good, then I can do things that are fast and fun. If my body is telling me, hey, this ain't the day, then I usually just go right to a strength exercise, hit that for 3x5, and I'm out the door.
Solid. Yeah. And that's like what you and I were talking about. It's something I might play around with. Typically, and this is what we do for a lot of guys in here as well, is I will start my sessions with a ramp warm up, which is raise. So I'm getting my temperature up, getting my blood flowing, activate. So I'm doing something like airplanes that's activating the muscle, but it's not super high skill or super high stress. Mobilize and then potentiate, which is where I do my power development, and then I'll jump into the actual lift. But I do like, for certain things, doing some accessories beforehand and working into the bigger movements later on. Because like right now, maximal strength is not my goal either. So I definitely think if that is the goal of like performance, power, but your strength numbers are where you want them to be and you're happy with it, then it can absolutely have some benefit in there. Cool. So we got some questions here. Before we dive into the questions, is there anything you want to add to the exercise order, Tyler?
No, but just to kind of piggyback what we're talking about, we're a little older and we've had some experience, so we can kind of bend the rules, if you will. There is a general, tried and true, scientific, principled method to this stuff, and it works. And I've probably been doing it since I was 14 years old. And this experimentation that me and John are talking about is something that I've done within the last year or two. So I know you guys might be excited to try some of these things, and I'm all for experimentation, but that's what it is. It's an experiment. If you're focused and training for something, you're probably not doing a lot of experimenting. I'm a strength scientist. That's all I like to do. So there's a difference to things. And one time a wise old coach told me, like, if you get really strong, you earn the right to go do something wacky or move like a crap bag. Or, hey, if you've put in the work, you've earned the right to start experimenting. So
yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
I like that. And I love experimenting. I probably drive my training partner, Sean, a little bit crazy because I'll be like, I feel like once a month when I'm building the plan, I'm like, hey, I was talking to Tyler about this thing and it was really interesting and I think we should try it in this. He's like, all right. But you're absolutely right. training for selection is not the time to experiment. And if you have 6 months before your selection date, your training, especially on the strength side, might look a little bit boring. It's not going to be super exciting CrossFit Metcons every day that you're, having so much fun with it. It's built in a way to support your performance where it matters. So sometimes if you are a little bit bored with your plan, there's obviously things we can like tweak accessories, change movements out that are still hitting, movement patterns or those same muscle groups. We can do things like that. But overall structure, you don't need to go change and find an exciting thing to do. You're a professional that does professional things and putting yourself in the best position to succeed. So first question I want to touch on tonight, which is a fantastic question. I think I'm probably going to do an entire podcast on this soon, is pacing at selection. And the question is, hey, should I be going all out during selection? I got you, Bridger. I'll get you right in a sec. Should I be going all out in selection with each event, or should I be pacing myself a little bit to make sure that I'm not crushing myself through it? And there's probably going to be different Green Berets that have different viewpoints on this, but I would say it depends on where you're at. Like objectively, where are your numbers? And I'll tell a little story. So when I was in selection, there was a guy there who was an absolute beast, stud. This guy, he was like the king of the X-rays, so to say. Everyone looked up to him. Everyone was like, this guy's definitely going to get selected. Well, he was so used to getting down and busting out 80, 90 push-ups on the APFT at the time that when he did his initial PT test, you can kind of hear the clicker of the grader next to you, and that's how you know your push-ups are counting. You may or may not have it now, but that's how we did it back then. And he counted to 80 or 85 and stood up with a minute 30 left in the test. He immediately dropped out of the course. So because he didn't put the effort in that PT test and he maxed it, right? He was still dropped. So one of the things that they want to see is that you're putting out effort. If it's like obvious that you're sandbagging, it's not going to look good. Second is take an objective approach to your numbers. I was running low to mid 12s on my 2-mile run when I went to selection, which is respectable, but it's not the best in the class. There's still going to be lots of guys running 11:30s, etc. So for me, I didn't feel like, because there's so much competition there, I could sandbag or I could hold back on my things. And also I knew that if I intentionally held back on those movements and ended up getting dropped during gate week or because of my physical performance, I wouldn't be able to live with that and not putting out 100%. So if you, like, your numbers are not stellar, like you're not top 5% of the class guaranteed, then I would probably say go all out. And I'll talk about what that means to me in a second, but push yourself and don't feel like you have to slow yourself down to save for the next event, because if you try to save for the next event, you might not get there. So you want to be competitive. Now, when I say go all out, that doesn't mean you are redlining the entire time. We can still go into those movements with a strategy. For example, on the 12-mile ruck, we know that if you are around a 230 on the 12-mile ruck going in, then you're going to be pretty damn good on your unknown distance rucks. So for me going in, I've talked about this many times, I had a pacing strategy. My pacing strategy was, hey, I know that if I run for 200 paces, and a pace is every time my left foot hits the ground, and I walk for 50 paces, which is something I can keep up forever, seemingly, I'm right around that 12:30 per mile pace. So when I did my unknown distance rucks, I pushed myself. I was competing. I was trying to pass guys. But when I got to that point where I was like, damn, I don't know if I can freaking maintain this, instead of just falling back and letting, everyone pass me, I reverted to my strategy with the ruck of 250. And then I went into that. So I would say have a strategy. You're not redlining when I say you're going all out, but you are putting out on those events. You're not intentionally sandbagging, trying to save some for the next day. Because if you're intentionally sandbagging and everyone else around you is not, and you're in that last part of the run and you're crossing the finish line towards the end of the pack, it's not going to be a good feeling. You're going to have a lot of uncertainty going into the next day. Bridger, what's up, brother?
Down. Okay, there we go. Sorry. I was going to ask for a recap on the priority of movements, but then I remembered that he did the little summary earlier, so I'll just go back and watch the video later. My mistake.
No worries, brother. Yeah, so one thing we didn't hit is warm-up. So I like a ramp warm-up, raise, activate, mobilize, potentiate, and then we go into speed or power. Then from there, we go into our big strength movements. Those are those lower rep ones, but a lot of joints, assistance, and then conditioning towards the end. Just to hit that real quick. All right. Next question.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And next question, and I want you guys to weigh in on this one a little bit down in the chat. What do you think is worse to train in? Extreme humidity or extreme cold? What's your take, Tyler?
Well, I've done both, and I'd have to say what's worse is extreme cold every time. Even though if I ever had to go to selection, I would want to be cold and not hot. But as far as training, yeah, I feel like that's why all the olds moved to Florida, because it's like really good on the joints when they wake up and go to the mail. It's the same thing for training. Like, you can warm up and be sweating, but the humidity does help the tissue pliability. It's really uncomfortable. Again, I lived in the panhandle of Florida for 8 years. Like, it sucks. I would go out, try to grab something from my truck, come back in, my whole body's wet. Like, it's just really humid. And because of that, you have to do your due diligence with hydration, electrolytes, etc. But cold is really hard to maintain tissue integrity. And what I usually mean by that is temperature. So when you do that ramp warm-up that you're talking about, that temperature of tissue matters. It matters how the nervous system can innervate it. It matters how durable it can be. And when it's cold, it is really hard to make effective change in extreme cold. Now, it is also really fun working out in extreme cold if you're with the homies and you pop your shirts off and you're having a good time and being goons. But consistent training in the cold, I would never take that over humidity.
Yeah, I agree with you with the consistent part. But I went to selection. I started selection January 6th. So I'm a January selection class guy, and I would take a winter selection all day long. Dude, like, yeah, I mean, I went to selection in January, but I went to SUT in the spring, went to SEER over the summer. So I got exposure to, hey, training in the cold and training in the heat. And all day long, I would take training in the cold. Reason for that is in the Army, especially with the movements that you're doing, having a pack on your back, you're going to stay pretty warm, and the potential for you becoming a heat cat or getting rabbed or anything like that is much, much lower. So if it's a military course, oh man, see, if it's a military, if it's a military course, yeah, if it's a military course like selection that's performance based, then I would say cold. If it's a military course where you're just sleeping outside like SUT and sitting in a patrol base, ideally like fall or spring, but I would take it a little bit hotter than being cold, because there were definitely some times where I thought my fingers were going to fall off. So it just depends on the scenario. But I say cold, and that's coming from someone living in Arizona. So I'm not in the cold. I can't really argue to it right now. We're kind of 50-50 on that one, though. A lot of guys said cold. A lot of guys said humidity. I'm surprised.
Yeah.
He said, Dan said, I'm a hypocrite. I say cold, but I've been holding out on the runs because it's been snowy and in the negatives. See? Yeah, I mean, I agree. I say cold as well, but when you have to wake up at 5 a.m, and go for a run and it's 20 degrees out, that's a lot harder than when it's 75 and humid. You know what I mean? Yep. Question. So I've been rucking without my waist strap and been fine. In what situation is it worth it? I'll touch on this one. I like to rotate my waist strap. So there's never really a ruck where I go, I'll touch on it, where I go no waist strap whatsoever, or full waist strap. I'm usually rotating that thing. Now, if you are rucking without the waist strap and it's not getting to the point where the pain in your shoulders is so excruciating that's slowing you down or whatever, then I would say you're totally fine to do that. The reason I rotate it is when you put your waist strap on, you can take a little bit of that tension off of your shoulders. You're distributing it to your hips. But the downside of that is you're distributing it to your hips, which makes your hips get tired, which will actually slow you down. So when I feel my hips get tired or anything like that, then I will take the waist strap off, let my shoulders scream a little bit, but I'm not getting to the point where I'm slowing down because of my hips. So if I were to prioritize one, I would prioritize no waist strap on the timed rucks, but it's just situation dependent. If you feel your hips are great and you're using the waist strap and your hip flexors aren't getting really tired and actually slowing down your pacing, then you're good to go with it. But for me, I feel it in my hip flexors, especially during land navigation, navigating from point to point. So I would rotate that hip pad throughout the movement. Great question for you, Tyler. Do you have any tips when it comes to the deadlift or deadlift form as a taller athlete?
So earlier in my career, I would tell you, just because you were tall, you were at a mechanical disadvantage. And then Theor Bjornsson and all these tall dudes started setting world records. So clearly, I wouldn't take being tall as a detriment when it comes to the hinge. You just kind of need to maybe have a better understanding of what's happening. So everyone's angle of pull in the deadlift will look different depending on limb length. And then via limb length, we know if it's going to be more of a push or more of a pull. So take like a very short, maybe Asian country weightlifter. Their femurs are so small or short that they could almost trap bar deadlift the deadlift. So they can almost squat mechanic that thing up. And someone like you who's taller, who just probably naturally has a little bit more stiff of an ankle joint, is probably going to rely way more of like an RDL archetype, and hopefully you can get your chest up a little bit. So like from that head to tail, in a perfect world, I could get you at a 45, but man, if you're really tall, you're going to be hovering over. So how to get better at that? One, you need to cue your legs to work hard in the beginning. So even before you're breaking inertia off that bar, your quad should be screaming with intent before you pop that bar up. So cue the legs, number one. Number two, just because they're going to be like the prime stabilizers for you, really make sure you know how to brace. And that just doesn't mean, hey, Valsalva maneuver, hike as hard as you can. It's really an understanding of what's happening at the lats. So pulling those shoulders down and back, my cue for some of my guys that I've trained in person is, don't let me tickle your armpit. So you'll protect it, pull it back down so I can't come in and tickle it. Or you could think about a golf ball in the middle of your back. You want to squeeze that golf ball, right? So it doesn't fall down. But you'd also, because of the squeeze, you don't want your what do you call it? Just this whole shelf area to be exposed so much that if I tapped you right in the stomach, you have no brace. So it's the in-between point of we need abdominal pressure down. So think about just bringing from ribs, I know you can't see my waist, down, and then the back getting engaged. And if you leverage that well, as a byproduct, you're going to access your legs even more. Now, let's say you don't have that yet. You can surely practice it in a lower fatigue state, i.e. a dead bug movement, or just taking the barbell and doing a static hold. So doing a pause below the knee in your deadlift and just holding that and trying not to rock back on your heel, staying in the middle of the foot, because that middle of the foot ensures that those quads are still working. And then on the last piece of that, maybe for your accessory, the back extension off of a GHD is going to be your friend. If you can get really good, get a barbell back up on your back and it's going to enforce that brace. So you can back extension normal, definitely get some benefits out of it. You can hold some stuff in the front, some load, definitely get some benefits out of it. But when you attach a barbell to your back, and it could be like a smaller, maybe there's a bar in your weight room that's like maybe female or short, it's got some padding on it. But if it's a loaded bar, it's going to put you in a really good position that's going to mimic that deadlift pull.
Love it. Yeah, even like the curl type bars, the straight bars that are on those racks would be a good one for it. All right. Do you have any tips for getting to sleep early / waking up early? And how do you fuel before your morning workout? So I'll touch on the first one, and then I'll pass it to you for the second one, Tyler. So I used to say, like, even after I got out of the Army, even though I spent time in group and everything, I used to say, I'm not waking up at 4 a.m. unless I'm going hunting.
Hell yeah.
Until I had kids, until I had my daughter. Now I don't have any time to go to the gym, so I got to wake up at 4 a.m. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I freaking hate this, right? Two things that have helped me tremendously. Number one is I use my watch as the alarm, and I'll set it across the room. So it goes off on the dresser. I have to physically get up out of bed and go get it. So for me, and I thought about this all the time during selection, because the first 5 minutes at selection, when they turn the lights on in the bay and you've gotten 3 hours of sleep and you're super tired, that's like the hardest part of the day. But I knew at selection, I was like, okay, I just got to ground my feet. If I just stand up, put my feet on the ground, I know the odds of me moving and going and doing stuff go up tremendously. Same thing in the morning. If you freaking stay in bed and you're hitting snooze while you're laying down, you're probably losing the fight. So when you hear the alarm that's on the other side of the room, get your feet on the ground, ground your feet. And then number two is for me, and if you guys have access to this, have a training partner. I know someone that can meet me at the gym every day and like legitimately give me shit and send me like sleepy memes if I sleep in or anything like that. That will help tremendously with getting up early to go to the gym during your prep. When you're at selection, all that stuff, you're getting up early no matter what. Like, you're going to have that accountability next to you. Sometimes that accountability can help. And then to back end or to front load that question is sometimes the best thing we can do is have an alarm in the evening to kind of cue our wind down routine, and kind of like what Tyler talked about yesterday on the podcast, if you guys had an opportunity to listen to that, is having consistent sleep and wake schedules. And if we can be consistent with that bedtime, then it's going to be a lot easier to stay consistent with that wake time. And then second question is, how do you fuel before morning workouts? How do you fuel your morning workouts?
So I think it depends on how early, but I'm pretty sure the question is like, hey, I'm waking up and within 30 to 1 hour, I'm working out. So to do that, probably the primary thing I'm searching for is hydration right off the rip. I'm going to probably wake up, wash my face. Some of y'all take a shower in the mornings, brush your teeth. Then after that, I'm probably looking for electrolytes. So just because it's been 8 hours, hopefully, and you're about to go exert yourself, if you could supplement your electrolytes, that'd be great. So a noon tablet, something quick, nothing crazy. Like, you don't have to go with an element, even though I freaking love elements. Like, that's a G bar of sodium, which is perfect. But some of you guys have tablets that are like 350 to 450 milligrams. And that's great, because if you're going to pair that with some breakfast and add a little bit of sodium to that, then you're perfect. When it comes to eating in the morning, this is where a little bit of experimentation is going to go a long way. And the first thing you need to understand is carbohydrates are fuel, and you need fuel, especially with the amount of sugar and the amount of glycogen that's in you right now is probably a little bit limited because you've been asleep for a while, and those liver sugar levels are probably a little bit off. So it's actually sugar that you're going to be searching for. Now, the most digestible source of this type of sugar that mostly everybody can handle really well is fructose. So get your fruit in. an orange, a banana, even an apple, or it can go a long way. Some of y'all that may be like a serious hard gainer that really are like off put by eating in the morning, dried fruit can help a lot. Some of you guys can get like different dried fruit to where it's almost like laced in sugar, like at Costco. They've got these mangoes that have these sugar all over them. It's like eating candy in the morning. And that can kind of like have that excitatory response or that hunger response of like, okay, all right, here we go. And then you can start to add in a little bit more layers. When it comes to protein, I would just go the highest digestible. And for me, I have like an order of operation. Whey protein powder is extremely digestible because it's broken down like to the finest grain of powder. Side note, when I was trying to make weight for these weightlifting meets, we would eat protein powder like out of a bag because it didn't weigh anything. Yeah, it didn't weigh anything. So we're like, oh my gosh, food, thank you. And we could handle it. Like it wouldn't give us like weird belly stuff, but that's neither here nor there. So protein powder for me is one as far as digestibility. Now I know some of y'all, I have a couple of athletes that seem to feel bloated or have a high gas response. 9 times out of 10, I would search quality, but it's probably you're a little bit sensitive to dairy. So you might want to search for a non-dairy protein powder and just try to make that switch and see if it works. From there, if you can handle dairy really well, like I can, Greek yogurt is wonderful. It digests really, really fast, and it has multi-layered protein. It has a bunch of casein protein, so you won't be like starving 90 minutes into your workout. So that tends to be works really well. And then the best form for me would be eggs. And I feel like it's an extremely digestible protein that works really, really well. Do you have time to make it or not is up to you depending on your schedule. And usually when you have eggs, you want to pair it with something. Some guys do really good with a starch in the form of like wheat. So like bread, oatmeal. I'm not about that life anymore. I started hanging out with Samoans and I am a jasmine rice for breakfast guy with eggs, which is wonderful.
Same. I think baby. My wife jokes about it. To this day, she still gives me shit. But the first meal I ever cooked her was rice and eggs. And
she was like,
go. She's like, this is underwhelming. It's like, oh, this is what you get.
Yeah, they're very cultured, man.
Yeah. And then to add on that too, he hit the nail on the head of experimenting with this. Some foods, like we might recommend some foods for you guys, and you're like, no, this is not working for me. I feel like really tight. My stomach doesn't feel good. I can feel it sloshing around, burping the whole time. So if there's a food that you're experimenting with, don't be married to it. Be like, I have to do this because Coach John said I have to eat this for breakfast. Like, no, we want to get those carbohydrates in and support our performance, but it doesn't have to come from that one source. For me, what I do, especially on run and ruck days in the morning, what has worked best for me is just keeping it simple and having some honey and a banana, real light. And if I'm just like a run and my, had a big dinner, my stomach's feeling a little bloated, whatever, maybe just some honey. And that's usually just for run days rather, really, really good. And I feel nice and light throughout that session. If I have a whole breakfast and then I go try and run, I feel heavy and it doesn't work as well for me.
One little sidebar on that too, and this is my personal recommendation. You guys should fuel yourself before you ingest coffee. If you're hitting that really early morning workout, sometimes if you go straight to coffee out of bed, one, it's definitely going to mess with your GI tract. And then two, that caffeine or that response can kind of really depreciate the hunger value that you're going to get. So like it suppresses appetite. That's a fact. So if your intent is to fuel and you still want coffee, cool. Eat your food and then just drink your coffee on the way to the gym. And I know for most folks that like isn't the habit they want to break, but I'm telling you, like just do it for 21 days and you'll probably never do it again.
Yeah, I like that. Bridger, my man. He said, my wife says she ate more rice in our first year of marriage than the rest of her life combined. Feel that, man. Jasmine rice for life. Jeremiah asked, he said, question, legend has it, somewhere in the ether, is it bad to stretch a cold muscle? Do you agree? And if not, is it beneficial to do morning stretching on a cold muscle?
I personally do stretching in the morning after I eat my breakfast. It's something that helps me, and I do specific stretches. Primarily, like my favorite one, if I just could pick one, would be the elevated pigeon stretch on my sofa. And I can still look at my phone, going through my morning routine, whatever I need to do, and still hit that. The areas that have a lot of meat, so like the glute and the quads, because they're so dense and their muscle bellies tend to run so deep, you don't see any type of like crazy detriment to long, therapeutic, relaxed state lengthening. So that's why I like it, especially as a means to, I know we throw this word around, is bulletproof your back, but that's just kind of one of those things, like you should brush and floss your teeth. That's just kind of my like low back checklist for the day. Okay, I ate my breakfast. I got my coffee sitting in my little AirPress, and while it's just sitting there, I'm going to hit my my stretch for 2 minutes and then do 2 minutes on this side, and then I'll make my coffee, and that's just kind of my thing. So it's definitely not going to hurt you per se, but I wouldn't try to go extreme range. Any type of pain response that you might get is your body telling you to back off. So you just want to make sure you're relaxed with it. I tend to be a pretty pliable guy through the years of stretching, so it just kind of seems natural for me to just kind of unfold, and it works well. If you tend to be really, really stiff and tight, I would 100% do what I do, is just try that elevated pigeon pose and see if it kind of unglues some other things throughout the morning. So just kind of work with one or two. Don't try to do like I have a 60-minute stretching routine, because I do think that will mess with your nervous system enough to like depress you early in the morning.
Solid. Really solid info. Alpar said, about sleep consistency, I read that Cristiano Ronaldo, who's in a shape like a 20-year-old in his late 30s, he doesn't sleep a full hours, but he breaks it up to 90-minute intervals. What are your thoughts on this? Man, I forget what it's called. Tyler, you might know. But there's a sleep protocol that it's like you sleep 4 hours during the night, and then you take like a 30-minute nap during the day, and then a 90-minute nap during the day. And I forget. It's like very minimal sleep, but broken up throughout the day. And I guess there was some guy that did a study on it.
It's the Uberman schedule, and it's got a couple different varieties.
Uberman schedule. Okay. I'm going to note that. And I'm going to...
One of them is what you said, the 4 hours of sleep and then just 2 30-minute naps in the day. And the other is equally splitting up your day and taking a 30 to 40-minute sleep. And then, like, I think it's 2 hours, and you break your day up into 6 segments of the day, which is the most extreme version.
Yeah, it's nasty. I had a buddy when I went through Airborne. I had already got through selection. I was prior service, so I went to Airborne. He was an X-ray, so we paired up, and he was asking me questions and all that stuff. And he was like trying the Uberman schedule once he got to student company, and it was like, dude, this guy was a zombie for like 2 weeks, and then he swore by this schedule. And I was like, man, that's dumb, because you're not going to be able to do that when you're in selection or going through the pipeline. But it worked for him in that period of time. So long-term effects of it, I have no idea. Short-term, potentially. Now, when we sleep, we go through sleep cycles, and there's 4 stages of the sleep cycle. We have that light period. We have that transitionary period. We have our deep sleep, and then we have our REM sleep, which is where a lot of the cognitive function is made, and we clean up a lot of that, commit things to long-term memory and things like that. Now, those cycles on average, right, everything varies, last around 90 minutes. So when you say he breaks it up into 90-minute intervals, Maybe he's doing sleep cycles. I'm sure Cristiano Ronaldo has like the best wearables and the tech. Maybe he has a whole team like, testing and measuring all of that stuff. So for someone like that in that position, I'm sure he could get away with it and his metrics look fantastic. For the average individual trying to guesstimate it and do it on their own, I think it would be an uphill battle. And if you obviously work a full-time job, things like that, I don't think it's very realistic, but it's definitely an interesting topic to explore. What are your thoughts on that, Tyler?
I've never heard of this. I'm going to probably do my own research on this tomorrow, but kind of to piggyback John, like, I'm pretty sure that dude's worth like 200 mil a year. So if he wanted to, like with one snap, get rid of all stress in his life, he could just eliminate it and do whatever he wants. So is it effective? Perhaps. I'm going to research it. I'll probably get back to John and see what I can find. But it's like, dude, it's Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, he can do whatever he wants and it's going to be good. So he just has it.
He probably has a sleep pod. You know what I mean? It's like dead, silent, noise canceling, freaking completely blacked out. There's no way I can take a nap. If I try to take a nap, the baby's crying, like things are happening. There's just, it's very tough. So maybe. All right. Have you heard of factor meals? Bridger, one sec. I'll touch on this and I'll get back to you on that. Factor meals. Yes. Now Tyler might have your conflicting opinions on this, but what I always tell guys is the most important aspect to nutrition supporting your performance is hitting the necessary calories and macros on a daily basis. If you're struggling, maybe you have a really busy schedule, whatever, and you want to use a meal prep service like Macro Factor or Clean Eats, things like that, I say go for it if it's going to solve a problem that exists. Now, whether like all of the ingredients of those are going to be super clean, that's up for debate. But I think if it solves an immediate problem, then there's nothing wrong with doing it. Bridger, go ahead, brother.
Sorry, I was just going to tack on with the sleep thing. I mean, you mentioned Cristiano Ronaldo and everything, and I understand that the Olympic teams, when they're on the final build-up to the games, the official games and everything, they start them sleeping on a portable fold-up mattress. It's like some super high-end temperature-controlled mattress and stuff, and they start them sleeping on that so that when they're on the road and they're traveling, they're sleeping on the same exact mattress that they had during their train-up. So when they get to wherever they're going to, there's just that minimal, that feeling of transition or whatever, like when you sleep in a different bed and it feels different, you're going to have a crummy sleep. So even the Olympic teams, they like really lock in on the sleep quality and the sleep consistency.
Yeah, 100%. We actually had a guy, Kenji, who moved recently, and he was having some troubles with his sleep just moving from one place to another. No schedule changes, anything like that. Just the change in environment, and it's taken a little bit to improve that. So yeah, I think that's a really good example of the importance of sleep consistency, both with environment, time, all that stuff. Morgan asks, how often should we be foam rolling and or stretching each week? Is there such a thing as too much foam rolling or stretching? Tyler, I'll let you handle that.
So when it comes to foam rolling, I don't think you can do like too much because it can only work to a certain degree. So if you want to sit on a roller like forever, that's cool. It's not going to do anything bad to you, but you are wasting your time. It interferes with fascia, which is superficial tissue, and it rubs across that muscle tissue, that fascia, and it creates that friction, and it kind of smooths out the layers. So if your fascia was kind of wound up, it lays it nice and fine. And we know that from rolling for about 30 passes, so that up is 1, down is 2, for 30 passes, it could potentiate a nice 60-minute window for you of more optimal moving than you once had prior to the rolling. But after 60 minutes, if you're not solidifying new movement patterns in that time, that window goes away, because again, it's just very superficial. Now, if you start bringing like a PVC pipe into play here that you're rolling with, it could change a little bit of the tissue pliability demands. It could have more of a depress of the nervous system a little bit, but I wouldn't really put a timeline on rolling. It's just how much time do you want to waste, because after like 10 minutes of full body rolling, like, you're good. Most people use the word rolling when it comes to a lacrosse ball and doing trigger point work. That's entirely different. You could spend quite a large amount of time getting a lot of reward, but on the backside, you're going to be completely CNS depressed, want to go sleepy and not train, which is fine if that's the goal. It's like getting a serious like 2-hour deep sports massage. It's going to do excellent things for you, but you're not training that day. And there's going to be effects a little bit tomorrow from that as well, depending on how deep, how sore that tissue might be the next day. So yeah, you could definitely do some things to yourself that is a little bit too long, but luckily you have a nervous system and a brain, and they usually send those signals to you like, okay, this is enough.
Yeah. And then the second part of your question was, how often did I do this during selection of the Q course? I did it every day. It wasn't something I'd spent a ton of time doing, but I brought a roller to selection when we were hanging out in the barracks. You know, I was on a roller. One thing that really helped me was actually just laying flat on the ground and with bent legs, putting my feet up on the bunk, and just sitting there like that. And I would just have conversations, just hanging out. That helped me quite a bit with the lower back pain, and also with reducing the inflammation in my feet from being on them all day long. So definitely rolling. I did a lot, and then that position helped, and then some light stretching. Don't go too crazy with stretching during selection, because too much, like you said, can be bad, and you will get sufficient amount of time to do too much. You're going to get 6 hours of downtime in the barracks probably per day, maybe more. You're not allowed to sleep. You just sit there, and it's kind of like part of the test. You know, how long can you be bored for in gate week? And a lot of guys will spend so much time like the entire time stretching. Like if you stretch for 6 hours, there's going to be some negative effects to it. Next question is, how can I bulletproof my legs / spine for heavy rucking loads? Now Tyler's going to touch on his. I'm going to touch on some of the biggest things that helped me, and some of the biggest things I see with younger guys going into it. Now, I've talked about it a few times. I got into strength and conditioning more so out of interest, but also out of necessity, because I had a lot of injuries from rucking that I thought had to do with rucking, and it really just had to do with my imbalances that I developed from poor training habits for many years. And one of the issues that I developed was poor glute strength, poor glute engagement, a weak TFL, and really bad hip stability. So some of the best things that helped me bulletproof my legs, so knees even, I'll touch on like TKEs, and my lower back for those heavier loads, is really focusing on that hip stability. Things like clamshell side planks, things like airplanes, working up to weighted airplanes, things like Copenhagen drill. Those are all fantastic to build those smaller muscles that help with the hip stability. And then inside of your guys' plan, a lot of you guys will see the TKE, the terminal knee extension. And what we're trying to target with that is your quad, or the bottom part of that quad, which helps a lot with the patellar tracking. We've talked about this all the time, that a lot of those issues you experience, the pain, are downstream effects of problems that exist usually around the hips or a weak core. So Tyler, are there any things that you would suggest for bulletproofing, your favorite word, of the spine or the lower back and the legs?
So I think you hit it really well when you prioritize the glutes. I think whether you guys think they're underdeveloped, they could just be underactive. So you have to learn how to activate those glutes. And like John was saying, some of you guys might have weak TFLs or glute min, med. So there's some basic PT-like drills that you can do to kind of bring them back online, bring blood flow to those areas, and try to wake them up. But you move and ruck on your feet, and ultimately it's controlled by your foot. So we know that the more optimal foot capabilities you have, the more optimal glute capabilities you have, which track the knee, because the knee is controlled by the hip and the foot. So getting that ankle range of motion could play huge dividends on the effectiveness and durability of your knee and your low back, because I feel like the knee and the low back whisper to each other, and like they just take turns on who's going to be hurt first, and they kind of play off of each other. So if your knee hurts, your back angle changes, and then your low back will start to get so smoked that you don't realize that your knee pain's gone, and then they just kind of trade off. So fixing your ankle range of motion sets you up really, really well. And like John was talking about, the hip airplane is one of the single greatest exercises to test foot and hip stability, which control the knee and ultimately keep the low back in a great spot. So the warm-up that he has and that we offer does a great job flat on its face. Now, the biggest mover of this is actually doing your diligence to warm up well, mobilize well, and hit your strength training accordingly. I know you might want to do a set of 10, but like those sets of 5 are in place for a reason, so that you can be more durable when you go hit a ruck on a Saturday, or maybe you have a ruck on a Tuesday, Wednesday, depending on your schedule. Sometimes, because we're military, you just want to blast and get that sensation of like, I work so dog hard. And what that's doing is it's not setting yourself up on a neurological level for recovery from the ruck. So I would go glutes, I would go foot. We want to wake up those muscles, get blood flow in them using those PT drills like you said. Then we want a multi-joint approach, i.e. the hip airplane. From that, a solid strength and conditioning foundation with principles that do not deploy that much stress. So minimum effective dose always wins. And that way you can start displaying that capability in the ruck.
Yeah, solid. Sweet, guys. If you got any last minute questions, drop them down in here. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Appreciate you guys hopping on. Appreciate Tyler and all your infinite wisdom. Really good stuff, as always. So for the rest of the week, guys, let's finish up strong. Let's go get those sessions in. Let's freaking ground our feet in the morning so we can wake up on time and go get those sessions in and be consistent. Last question is, how do I measure ankle mobility?
So an easy way to do this is to find a wall, and you will start with your toes up against like the molding or all the way up against the wall, keeping a flat foot with your heel still on the ground. You're going to drive your knee and have it touch the wall. Then you're going to bring it back a couple of inches, maybe like 2, and see if you still have it. Then 3, and optimal would be like 5 inches from like the edge of your toe hitting the wall. Most of us are not going to be there, but it'd be very interesting to test. And then I want you to test the other side and do a cross comparison. And then ask yourself, on which side of your body do you experience the most pain? And 9 times out of 10, it's usually the opposing side. So for example, if I have limited right ankle mobility, it's usually my left knee and my left glute and my left low back that get fired up. And that's just from a mechanism of overcompensating one side, because one side is lacking.
Yeah, solid. All right, I lied. One more question. Is there anything? Is there anything? I don't want you guys to go out without any information. No, I'm kidding. Is there anything that you can do daily outside of a workout / warm up to encourage that hip stability or mobility? I'll touch on mine. Tyler, you can provide some as well. Stretching is great. Once some muscles get super tight, it's hard for other muscles to engage properly. So stretching is good. And also for me, I personally see the best results when I do like a quick little hip mobility routine in the evenings, rolling on the floor. Maybe I'll do some banded clamshells, like literally laying like this on the floor, watching the TV, just doing my little old woman clamshells. Maybe I do a stretch where I'm opening up my groin or my adductors, which helps a lot because they're super tight for me. I don't go super hard with nightly like Copenhagen drills. I usually keep those in the plan, but especially hitting that glute medius, that meaty part on the outside of your glute and your TFL. So being able to hold that side plank position, I see the best results when I do that nightly for 5 to 10 minutes, and then go into my stretching where I'm doing couch stretch, I'm doing pigeon, and I'm typically doing that groin stretch that I talked about, which is I just sit on the ground and then I open my legs as wide as possible and sit there for 2 minutes. Tyler, you got anything to add to that?
I would completely agree with everything you just said. And then just one extra drill that you would want to do is just a straight up single leg balance. So you're going to lock your leg out. It's going to be firing kind of like you're trying to show off your quad muscles. And then the other foot is just hovering. And you're just going to try to balance for like 1 to 2 minutes. And in the balance, the objective isn't to, hey, let's just see how long I can stand on a single leg. Yay. Really, it is, with this leg locked out, can I feel my foot kind of taloning or clawing the earth? Am I creating an arch? And do I feel my glute coming online? Because after about a minute of my single leg balance, my stuff is screaming because I can activate it pretty well. So some of you guys with some dormant glutes, it might take some while for that to come online, but hold that balance until you feel your glute like really kind of flare up, so to speak.
Love it. I'm going to try it tonight. New experiment. All right, guys, go get those sessions in. If you need anything, hit us up. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week and we'll talk to you soon.